Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power of Man podcast. My name's Rory Paquette. You guys all know that already. You wouldn't be here if you didn't know that. So I still love to say it. I love to hear that because I've been working on this for so long, and you folks are so awesome. You've been following us for such a long time. I do want to take a quick moment and thank you folks for everything that you're doing out there. If you're not liking and subscribing and sharing and sending hundreds of DMs every week, then I don't get to sit here and do what I'm doing. So very grateful to all of you for lifting us up and keeping us going all these years. It's been my pleasure, and I hope that one of the reasons you do that and that you keep following us and you keep helping us out is because we bring on powerful men like we have today who have some unique ideas and things that you want to hear about on topics that are important. So hopefully we will never let you down in that area. And I think that this guy that I have on here today, is sitting across from me, is going to really hold up his end of the bargain. He's got some really cool stuff he's going to tell you about today. Before we do that, though, if you're a friend of the program, you know what time it is. We got to pay some bills. That's right. So let me take a sip of my preferred beverage. Man, that's good stuff. Just made a brand new fresh cup before we jumped on. You guys all know what it is. That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Go check them out. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. They brew a mean cup of joe. It is a mean bean, and they do all the right things for all the right reasons. They support veterans, which is why we support them because you all know how important veterans are here at the Power Man Podcast. So, Freedom Hill Coffee. Go check them out at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Tell them Power Man sent you. Let me get one more sip so I can keep up with this guy. All right, I'll be drinking that through the whole episode so that I can keep on moving. I'm not a young buck anymore. We gotta keep this thing flowing. We have an awesome guest with us today, folks. Administrator and author. He's written 4 books. He's got goodness, I mean, 25 plus years in the school system in various capacities, which he's going to tell you about. Please welcome to the show, Leroy Slanzi. Leroy, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Rory. Thanks for having me today.
I
I'm
appreciate it
excited
very
about
much.
I'm excited about our conversation.
Good deal. Good deal. I was when your bio came up, and I was looking things over. This was really fascinating to hear someone who is a principal, talking about new ideas and things like that. I checked out your YouTube channel, and it really got my attention. Um, Tell people, all my listeners who may not know who you are yet, who is Leroy Slanzi? What are you about, and what brings you here today?
Well, first and foremost, and this is the most important thing in my life, is I'm a dad. I have a 16-year-old daughter who rules the roost. If anybody has a daughter out there, you know how that works. And I have a son who's 18, just finishing up his first year of college, and those two are the most important people in my life, which kind of leads into why I'm here. I've been in education for 25 years, and I've seen a massive shift in how kids are functioning these days. My first book was called Emotional Schools, the Looming Mental Health Crisis. And I don't want to brag about, us Gen Xers and how tough we were because, we are.
Mhm.
And we were raised a certain way. And I've watched, over the last 25 years, things shift in the educational system. I've watched things shift within in the parental realm with what goes on in the nuclear family, or any kind of family for that matter, because of technology, because of the economy. So many factors are coming in, and we have a generation of kids who are struggling with their mental health. We have a generation of parents who don't know how to help their kids become stronger mentally. That grit, that perseverance, that resilience is really waning. I mean, there's still a large part of the population, student population, that they're still doing well, but it's dropping rapidly.
Mm.
And so that's my goal, is to be on podcasts like this, and I do a lot of workshops for teachers to try to help change the educational system so we can get back to having kids that are, resilient and aren't um, quitting when things get tough, right? And ironically, I just had a conversation. I have a lady from Ethiopia that I actually work with who does some virtual assistant stuff for me, and we were talking about the public system, education system in a place like Ethiopia in Africa. Same thing. And I can talk to people from Australia. I can talk to people from United States, from Europe, from India, from China, from wherever. And the same thing is happening globally with our kids. And our education system needs to shift quickly, or we're going to have a large group of adults that, don't have the right strength to cope in today's society, if that makes sense.
Wow. You unpacked a lot right there. You
I
you
did.
said a whole lot. So,
Mm-hmm.
as a Gen Xer who also has, my oldest is a daughter, and then I have two sons that are, bigger than I am, and I'm an empty nester at this point. So, you're going to be soon, but you're not there yet. So, hold your breath. The
Yeah, yeah.
it's awful, but as somebody who is a Gen Xer, I know what you're talking about, of course, and it's the thing that memes are made of. That Gen Xers were raised drinking out of the garden hose, and so we're tougher. Um, and yet, I can't help but think that somehow some of this is on us. Is it that we babied our kids, or that we didn't put them through the same things we went through? Is there a cause you can point to, or do you try to avoid pointing fingers like that when you're doing what you're doing?
Nope. It's not one thing. That's the first thing that we need to make clear. I think,
Okay.
you've heard that expression. It's the perfect storm. I think, there's this generation of parenting that are helicopter parents and lawnmower parents, right? Where they live in fear around their kids getting hurt. And that's emotionally and physically. So that comes into play. So we have overdoting parents. But we also live in a world where, back in the Gen X generation, I mean, we lived in a world where mom stayed home and dad worked. And so mom was always home. And so we got home from school, mom would have some snacks. We'd get snacks. She'd say, "Get your ass outside and play." And we'd go out and play. It's you better
Right.
watch out or your dad's coming home, that kind of thing. That generation. And I think that's shifted too. The way families work is we live in a world now where one income isn't going to do it. Plus, we live in a world, and all the power to women who are, becoming leaders in industry and are there to work and to be successful. And so because of that, you have both parents who are working and bringing home the bacon, and partly because they have to pay the bills, and the other part is because women are in the workforce now, and because of that, you don't have that nuclear family to kind of do, have what we had, right? And there's also that what comes with that is the technology piece that comes in. When both parents aren't there, kids get home, nobody's telling them to get outside, so they go on their gaming systems or they're on their phones, right? And the other piece to that is there's this fear in the world, whereas if our kids go outside, they're going to get kidnapped, and we got to be careful where they're at. And then, and so it's been a mixture of technology, social media, gaming systems, both parents having to work, parents doting on their kids too much. Um, the whole what's the generation, the whole self-esteem movement, the whole everybody gets a participation ribbon movement, which I think has done the most damage over the years, where we've kind of set it up where kids, get a ribbon no matter how hard they work or don't work. and
Right.
and even in school systems, a lot of times, you're forced to pass kids when they've failed. And I'm all for social promotion. I don't want a 16-year-old sitting in a grade 5 class. You want them to move along eventually,
Right.
and whatnot. But I think it's just been a whole myriad of things with the shift in society. And this is the era we're living in. We're not living in the industrial revolution. We're not living in I mean, I think the technological revolution is even shifting, because now we're in this AI based generation, and there's just so much, and all of it is played, a part in this generation of kid who's growing up, and it's no fault of their own, where they're immersed in this world where, they can access anything and everything. I mean, this might be a little off color, but I remember finding my first Playboy under my buddy's dad's bed, and we had
Sure.
to it took hours of sleuth like behavior to try to find it. Do you know what I mean? So we
Right.
had to be critical thinkers, and it was like watching out. And kids can access stuff that they shouldn't be, and they're being inundated with stuff. Like, this generation's got it tough
Yeah.
because they don't have the parental support, the attachment's fading, play is just free play is just diminishing, and as a result, we have kids who just can't handle shit, right?
I love the way that you said that when you started off. You said it's the perfect storm. So it's not just one thing. And I think we probably
Mm-hmm.
do get too bogged down in like the blame game, you know. Oh, it's because of this and it's because of this. And well, if I have this belief system, then it's because of this. But if I believe something else, well, then it's because of this. And I think you're right, actually, it's sort of everything it has just completely changed from top to bottom. When you can accept that and when you move forward from that premise, then you can stop worrying about, where to place the blame and you can look forward, which I think you really are specializing in right now, and
Mm-hmm.
move forward and say, okay, look, this is where it is for whatever reason, however it happened. Now, what do we do? And so it sounds like that's where you kind of pick up the ball and take off.
That's exactly it. Because you know, it's God. We're in this position right now in the education system, and I've been lucky because I've been at it for 25 years. I've watched the shift and where kids were, and then pre-COVID when the introduction to gaming came, post-COVID when all of a sudden now kids' attendance is going down the tube because COVID shifted that, and then getting to this place now where social media is just running rampant. And at the end of the day, there is something that can be done, and it's about going. It's not going about. See, and this is where people think, well, we should just do it like we used to. It's like, no, you can't. It's not like we can go back, to the Industrial Revolution and have mom stay at home. That generation, that era is gone. That
Right.
does so. We're in the era we now. So the question is what can we do as parents and what can we do as schools? And I think this is the biggest part, right? Is getting parents in schools to understand that developing emotional intelligence is the key to kids building perseverance, grit, and resilience. And I know it's kind of sounds like, well, that's a bit complicated. It's really not. And I'll bring it right down to something that's as simple as that everybody can understand. So go back in the day. What's one thing that we did without our parents all the time as kids is we played. We were outside playing. And when you play, you're learning the tools that you need in life. So, for example, when you're playing with your buddies, you're communicating. If you disagree with your buddies, you're in conflict. And, back in the day, we might have scrapped a little more than we probably should have talked. But, but we talked through things. We also, back in the day, we had to critically think. Like, I grew up on the side of a mountain, and I don't remember how many times we're on the side of a mountain and we're like, wow, there's cliffs there, and we got up too high. It's like, how do we get down? So we're critically thinking, right? We're also being creative because we had to get up there somehow, and same thing with city kids. They may get themselves into situation as kids and they'd have to get out of them, right? And in the meantime, they're collaborating with their friends. So you listen to all those words: communication, critical thinking, collaboration, creative thinking, and they're also aware of how things are making them feel. They're also aware of how their friends feel in other situation. And all of those things are what emotional intelligence is. And so when we were younger, we used to develop emotional intelligence naturally. It came in spades, right? And part of that emotional intelligence came too because our parents would say, if we were bored, go outside and play with a rock or a stick. We didn't always have toys. And so we did. And when you play with the rock and a stick, you damn well better be creative, right? And you've
Right.
got to do that. And so I think that is probably the biggest thing in terms of what's going on with our kids in terms of perseverance right now is that they don't have the emotional intelligence developing naturally like we did. And so our job as parents is to be purposeful, and our jobs as educators is to be purposeful in developing that emotional intelligence. Because if you develop that emotional intelligence, I'm going to get all sciencey on you now, it helps to develop your ego, right? And when people hear ego, it's like, oh, he's egotistical, he's a narcissist. It's like, well, no, let's just remove that phraseology from it. At around 7, 8 years old, your experiences in life, whether it's a traumatic event or a fantastic event or whatever environmental influence you had, starts to develop your ego, and your ego is who you are, right? And depending on your interactions that you had, whether it's traumatic or wonderful or whatnot, you'll either end up with an overactive ego where you're like overly confident, or that's where the narcissism starts to come in, or you're a know-it-all, or you have an underactive ego where you have low self-esteem. You don't think you're good enough, and all of those things, right? And so starting that early and identifying that emotional intelligence, how it helps kids develop a balanced ego. And when you have a balanced ego, it means that you can approach things from a critical lens, and a lens from common sense, because you're not hopping up and down. And so the key really is to you know purposefully infuse things in your kids' lives very early that allow them to develop a balanced ego and to develop that emotional intelligence, right? I know it might be a bit confusing. It sounds a bit confusing right now, but I'll give you an example. So in today's day and age, we have parents who are also on their phones all the time. I'm sure you walk downtown or wherever, go get a cup of coffee at your favorite coffee joint that you talked about earlier, right? And as you're walking, you're seeing parents, instead of engaging with their kids, on their phone,
Sure.
right?
Right.
Or they're at the park and their kids are on the swings and they're sitting on the bench and they're on their phone, not pushing their kids on the swing anymore. And so the purposeful piece for parents is that they actually need to put their phones down and they need to re-engage with their kids, and they need to help their kids get back to that place where they find a passion. So let's just say you have a kid who's on the swing and he's loving the swing, and then you say to the kid, when I was a kid, we used to draw a line out in front and we'd try to jump off the swing and jump past that line. And I know you did that, Rory, because we all did, Gen X, right?
Of course.
But that's just a simple example. And so as a parent, it'd be like, yeah, here, let me draw that line for it. And as a parent, get the technology, put your technology down, put their technology down. And now you just draw that line. It's like, okay, let's go for this. Okay, you made it. First of all, they're going to ask, well, how do I release off the swing? Right there, that's critical thinking. That's communication, right? And you teach that. And next thing you know, it's like, okay, the line's here. Let's go for it. Now you're talking about goal setting, right? And so that's play. And so as a parent, if you're purposeful in that, that helps develop that emotional intelligence, which again balances your ego. So it could be something as simple as Lego, Play-Doh. Kid gets a curiosity around four-leaf clovers, get them to go outside and chase that. And the key is to make sure that your kids learn how to chase those passions before you introduce technology, and you do that with them. Do you know what I mean? Because you have
Yep.
to be purposeful nowadays, because nowadays most parents are too afraid to send their kids out into the cul-de-sac with their buddies to ride bikes all over town because they're afraid they're going to get kidnapped by someone, right?
Right.
So parents have to step up and do that. And the more parents develop and allow for kids to chase something they're curious about, that they can explore and discover, the easier it's going to be for that kid to be successful in life, because they're going to develop that emotional intelligence because they're curious. It's intrinsic motivation. And then once that intrinsic motivation is set, go ahead and introduce technology, but make sure you do it tactfully, and you don't just say, here, go sit and game for 3 hours. No, it's like, okay, you need to get outside now and go play some street hockey, go ride your bike or whatever. And then you get an hour of technology, and so that's probably the biggest thing on the parental side that needs to happen, is to allow kids to develop that intrinsic motivation, and then in
Okay.
schools, it's a different structure that you have to kind of put in place, but the same idea.
Okay. So with parents, I mean, you're talking about being present, obviously put the phone down, be purposeful, have intention towards the kids. I'm hearing you loud and clear. It's something that does not happen nearly as much anymore as it used to do. Um, the kids have changed also, and that's part of, we're not trying to blame anything. We're just looking at where are we really. My kids on paper, for instance, are brilliant, straight A's, high test scores, everything else. But I tried to teach them how to change a tire, and I'm doing it right in front of them, and they're looking at me like I'm speaking a different language, you know? And so the critical thinking, the problem solving is really gone, because what they've grown up learning is, let's see, is there an app for that? Nope. Well, then I can't do it. I got to call somebody. And it's almost a helpless standpoint. So in our family, we've been very purposeful about that, about encouraging problem solving and stuff like that. But we also are the minority in that my wife was able to stay home with our kids. And so that
Hmm.
was huge for them and what they did. But I, run different groups and things like that with what I do now. And I talk to men all the time. And the thing I would always get back, if they were sitting here and it was a bunch of my listeners and you and I were up front and we were talking to them, one of the things they're going to say back to you, and I can almost hear them, is that's a great idea, but I'm working one and a half jobs, to keep food on the table. My wife's working full time because everything costs three times as much as it should. You know what I mean? And how am I supposed to do that? How do I do that? And then this is where I hear all the time, which I never heard growing up, but I hear all the time now, isn't that the school's job? Why are they going to school? And so this isn't my standpoint. I'm just presenting this because I'd love to hear your thoughts on um, where the parenting like sort of ends and the school begins in your plan, and what you think it should be. Not to take the responsibility off the parents, because look, we all have to do better.
Hmm.
But where is the school's responsibility? In that, is there one? Is that one of those things that just isn't the school's responsibility? It's ours. Love to hear your thoughts on
Yeah, that's the elephant in the room, isn't it? And
that.
this is the hard part because I've been doing this for 25 years, so I've watched the culture of teaching shift. I posted a video, just a little social media post about 3 weeks ago. And my my question was, are we even teachers anymore? Not meaning, not trying to belittle the system, but it's like, why are we being called teachers? Because the traditional sense of a teacher is, I am an English teacher, I teach social studies, I'm an elementary teacher, and you're teaching subjects, right? That's your job as a teacher. You and I grew up with reading, writing, and arithmetic. And if our behavior or our work ethic wasn't up to par, Mr. Riley would pick up the phone and he'd say, Mr. Slanzi, Leroy's not getting his blah, blah, blah. I get home, cuff up the back of the head. Mr. Riley's getting work out of me, right?
Right.
And so you and I grew up in a generation where school was teacher based, where we went to English, we read The Outsiders. We did English. We did social studies. We did math. And that's where it is. And the place we're at now is we have teachers who are really frustrated because there's an expectation coming from society and from government and from parents where they want us to do the parenting like you just described, right?
Right.
There's this
Yeah.
whole need for us to do the parenting. And in the same breath, the government's saying, okay, you guys need to step up and do the parenting because parents aren't parenting the way they used to because they're working two jobs or they have their own issues. And so what the government does is they come in and say, well, I want you to then incorporate, and I'll use a hot button topic, LGBTQT, make sure you're
Hmm.
teaching about that. Make sure you're teaching about this. Whether or not, and this is the shitty thing for the parent, for teachers, is you're in a catch 22 because whether or not I believe that should be infused in a school or not, my boss is saying, teach it, right? And it's our job to not indoctrinate kids and to do, our job is to just try to teach common sense and to do the right thing. Be a kind, compassionate person. Whether or not somebody is this or somebody is that, you just treat them with respect. And that's our job. So we're at this place now, we're at this crux where teachers are like, am I a teacher or not? Like, am I teaching math? Am I teaching kids fractions? Am I teaching them how to multiply? Am I teaching them how to read and write? Am I teaching them that? Or am I having to sit here and teach this kid how to say please and thank you? Right? And
Right.
so that's where teachers are frustrated. Kids are coming in, they have no manners. A lot of kids can't even articulate a full sentence when they come in kindergarten, and they need speech language interventions because communication at home isn't happening because parents are on the phone and they're not. So my
Right.
pushback on parents is, the dads that say, well, I don't have time. It's like, okay,
Sure.
well, you're not working 14 hours a day, dude. When you get home, yes, some of you may be gone. Like I know in Canada, we have a lot of guys that go up and work on the oil rigs in Alberta and they're gone 2 weeks and back 2 weeks. And, even my dad, he was a heavy duty mechanic. And so I wouldn't see him sometimes till 8 o'clock at night. But you know what my dad did when he got home at 8 o'clock at night? He didn't go on his phone. He's like, get your ass outside. We're picking up rocks. Get out here. Right. And so he still, even though I didn't like the chores, he still did his duty as a dad, And so that's my pushback on that. It's like, I don't care if you get home after dinner, eat your dinner, you had those kids take an hour to teach them some manners, right? But with that being said, we don't live in that era anymore. We're not there. We're living in an era now where parents have expectations for teachers and schools to do parenting type roles. And teachers are in this era where they're like, I thought we were teachers, but now we have to do this. And they're like, do I even want to do this anymore? I want to quit. This is the, and so there's this blame game going on between everybody.
Yeah.
But, and this is where I come in, because at the end of the day, there is a way of appeasing both people. Unfortunately, sometimes it's about not contacting home, though, because if you contact home, when you do the parenting piece, the parents are like, well, you're indoctrinating my kid. How dare you teach my kid this? It's like, well, you can't have it both ways. So I actually encourage teachers to make that first phone call home if they have to. And if they get a parent on the other line that has common sense, is reasonable, let's keep up that communication. But if you're calling home and a parent's going to be an asshole and criticize everything you do, don't waste your time. Let's handle it in-house. Right.
Oh,
And so, yeah, I'm at that point. I used to be very pro call parent, but the amount of times you pick up the phone and you get screamed at, and a lot of it is entitlement. It's like, my child would never. It's like, well, if I had a camcorder on, you know, and this is for you and I, Rory. If a
yeah.
teacher called home in our generation, our parents were embarrassed and wanted us to behave. They wouldn't
Oh,
even
yeah.
for a second think that we didn't freaking sharpen the pencil 14 times while the teacher was talking. It'd be
Right.
like, be respectful, sit down, you know, and you know, if a teacher calls now saying your son's being distracting, they're sharpening the pencil, they're not listening, they're talking when I'm talking, can you just talk to them about proper thing? Well, what did you say to him? Did you say this? What did you say? No, I don't say no in my house.
Yeah.
And so you have this, and I don't want to use the word, I told you I was going to stay away from politics, but it's hard. It's
I
like
I know.
you have a, you have a, you know, and I'm a liberal, but I'm not woke. Like I shouldn't say that. Like you have these parents who are just like, let's please our kids. Let's remove every obstacle. And then you go to the far right. It's like, how dare you teach my kids about two dads in a home? And it's like, holy man, it's like, and so I just try to get everybody to be in the middle, and the two far right and far left people, you just got to kind of keep them at bay as much as you can. And no offense if your listeners are far right or far left. At the end of the day, it comes down to common sense. But to make a long story short, so you can see behind me all these posters and stuff that I got on my wall here. So
Yeah.
I have a program that's called the Emotional Schools Framework. It's based on my first book. And in that book, I outline, you know, the myriad of things that are creating this perfect storm of dysfunction in our schools. And it, but I must say, 60% of our kids are persevering. They have grit. They have resilience. They're doing good. Parents are doing good. So I want to make sure that we understand that. Like there's still a lot of families and kids meandering through this mess. The problem is that every year it goes from, you know, what if it was 70% parents being successful down to 65, down to 60. Down, it's just slowly disappearing. So what these posters are, they're the blue posters up top are based around these core competencies, which are communication, critical thinking, creative thinking, being personally aware, socially aware, which is all the facets of emotional intelligence and social intelligence, right? It's like about knowing who you are and how other people tick. And these other colored posters, they're just basically a common language that all teachers can use that revolve around emotional intelligence and being brave and persevering and teaching kids when the going gets tough. Take a deep breath, which is why I wrote that book called And Breathe. Like, take some deep breath. Let's have some breathing strategies so we can self soothe, calm our mind, and get at it. And so, the emotional schools framework, which I've now used in a high school, two elementary schools, and it works great. It's right away when kids come into kindergarten. And if there's an emotional barrier, which means that if a kid gets emotional, it usually means they're shutting down. So what we do is we teach kids, and I wish I could show you, I've got video clips of 5-year-olds explaining to me how we have this polyvagal nerve that runs through our whole body and it connects to our prefrontal cortex and our amygdala. And I have 5 years explaining how you can take some deep breaths, calm that nerve so it calms your amygdala down so you can think. And so we teach kids the science of emotions early, and parents can do the same thing. Teach them how it actually works in your brain, because emotions are science, right? And so we teach kids when the going gets tough, take some deep breaths, calm your body, because if you're calm, you can make a rational, emotionally intelligent decision. So that means when we get into these positions where kids all of a sudden get this assignment in front of them, even in kindergarten, and they get frustrated, instead of having a fit and wrecking the classroom and climbing under a table, they take deep breaths, they persevere, and they work through it, right? And we use this common language and we use the competency. So in my classrooms in my school, these visuals are everywhere. The bus drivers use them, the secretaries use them, the cooks use them, the education assistants uses them, the principals use them, the teachers. So we speak the same language around emotional intelligence and social intelligence, and our kids understand. Like I have kids, they may not know the words, but they know what the orange poster is telling them to do. They know what the green poster is telling them to do. They know what communication means. And so we teach that early, and guess what happens? We have stronger kids coming out of kindergarten, which means they're more successful with teaching stuff. So if you were to ask me the shift has to be starting as early as you possibly can, reintegrating emotional intelligence. The other thing that I supplement this with is free and structured play. So I have 2 recesses and a lunchtime at my school because I need kids to go outside and play like we used to do when our parents kicked us out. So now if you go outside onto my playground, you can walk out there and you can see grade 7s managing 80 kids in a school-wide game of man tracker. Right. And I went out there. I'm like, why are you guys playing Man Tracker? I'm like, I thought I only watched that. Well, they're watching Man Tracker on YouTube. So now they're playing Man Tracker out there. I'm watching kids put their feet in the middle and they're going eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Da, da, da. Like, and they're picking teams like we used to do in the cul-de-sac. You know, I grew up in a trailer park like we used to do in the trailer park, right? And so I've incorporated more free play, and I've asked my teachers my supervisors to kind of step back, and when the kids have conflict, not to be controlling, let them work through it unless you think they're going to come to blows and sort of step in. And if you have to step in, use the language. And we develop that so our free play is infused into what we do. And then on top of it, we have our structured play, which is PE. I also made a book. It's called Let's Play Bra, where I have games for teachers that they can use in their classrooms to try to get kids to be emotional, so you can teach them how to soothe and develop that emotional intelligence. And it's all infused. And so it's not an add-on for teachers. It's just built into the culture. And guess what's happening in my school? Literacy rates are going up. Numeracy rates are going up. I have more curious kids. I have healthier kids. My attendance is going up. When I say go up, I always think they're not coming to school, but it's like my absences are going down, I should say, because kids are more engaged. So we've had to I created a system where I've taken the 1980s, our Gen X, and I've taken what was beautiful of it and I've infused it into what we do in school. And then I use the kids, believe it or not, the kids go home and they educate their parents, if that makes sense. I'll give you an example. So yesterday I had this little guy, shoes are untied, teacher's frustrated. He won't let me help him. So what did I do? I brought him in, sat him in a chair, and I got one of those TVs in my room, and I went on YouTube because I know they love YouTube. And I found videos on the bunny tying. And this kid and I went through tying his shoes. And then I said to him, I said, can you practice on the weekend? And he said, yeah. And I said, is your dad going to be home? He goes, yeah. I said, are you going to get him to tie your shoes with you? He goes, he better. Guess what's happening now? My 6-year-old is going home and getting a parent to parent, because now at school, that's what we're doing. So are we still teachers or are we coaches? Do you know what I mean? And so that's where I hope I'm making sense, Roy.
Oh, you
Kind of
make
all
very
over the
good
map
sense.
there.
I
Yeah,
mean,
you got me on a soapbox.
you know, I hit a hot button apparently, which is
Mm-hmm.
no, I understand. We talked about this in the pre-interview. It's education right now is a hot button topic, no matter how you cover it. I mean, and so you're out here trying to be productive and trying to, present solutions, which I think is all you really can do right now to have a shot at being accepted. So I applaud you for what you're doing and the way you're doing it. Too many people who want to help start with, who's to blame, and they never get past that part. So you've kind of said, look, we are where we are. Let's fix it. And just that puts you ahead of the curve, so pardon my pun, but as
Mm-hmm.
far as that goes, you, in terms of as an administrator or other administrators who are following your program, for instance, they are teaching the teachers this program. Am I correct in that?
Yeah.
Okay. So then I guess the disconnect for me is we're hoping that the students then go home and start to kind of teach the parents, bring them into this. Is there any effort or movement? And maybe it's not practical because again, I'm not would never judge. I'm not sitting in somebody else's shoes. Um, is there an effort at all to teach the parents the program? Like, invite them to a thing, say, hey, this is what we're doing. Come check it out. This is what we're teaching your kids. And then if they don't come, then obviously it's on them. But I'm just wondering, is there some sort of effort or way to teach parents this is what we're trying to do?
And I use social media. So I do when I have I work in an Indigenous school. I've moved out of the public education system because I wanted to learn more about Indigenous people and the things that they went through, and it's probably
Hmm.
been the most fascinating move I ever made. But we have
Okay.
Indigenous cultures, food, and so we have a gathering once a month where there's like hundreds of parents come. But I don't indoctrinate them with this stuff. However, when they come into my school, they see these posters on the wall. And how can they're beautiful? It's Indigenous artwork too, right? And I get asked all the time, what is that? What I said, that's our program. I said, what Johnny's over there? Why don't you go ask your son what the orange poster means? Right. And it's all about being inclusive and treating others how you
I
want to be
see.
treated. And so it's that. And then I have a school Facebook page. I have my own personal Facebook page that's open. If TikTok too, LinkedIn. I tell parents all the time. It's like if they ask me questions or if I'm on the phone with them or they're struggling with parenting, I'm like, go on my stuff, go ahead, go check it out. And if you look at my socials all about parenting. It's all about emotional intelligence. It's all about this framework because it's how they teach. And you'd be amazed how
Hmm.
many responses I get from parents from other schools, not just my school. So but it's a matter of portraying it so you're not offending parents and you're not offending teachers. Because one thing, parents, they get very defensive if they think their parenting is not up to par. They want to hide, right? So you have to make
Sure.
sure that you present it in a way that, yeah, you're still a good parent. And you don't want to say, I know you're on your phone all the time, because I know they're on the phone all the time, but you don't want to come out and say that. You want to make them see it in a non-threatening way. And so between the kids going home and just being better and doing the right thing and speaking our same language and the social media and whatnot that we use, it's starting to make a change. My biggest roadblock is old school traditional leadership in this public school system, and so excuse me, and I don't want to pick on the United States, but I will a little bit. The United States is it's so assessment driven. Everything is, we need to assess. We need these standardized tests, even to get in your colleges. You guys do that SAT or whatever you call it,
Yep.
right? And I'm going to brag a little bit. In British Columbia, we've been in the top 5 in the world in education for a long time. We don't have SATs. We don't test the crap out of our kids. We teach critical thinking. We teach creative thinking. And so the problem is, though, in Canada, I also still have those administrators who are my age or older, or superintendents, or ministry or state, you know, education people who still think we need to just keep hammering literacy. We need to keep hammering numeracy. Let's pro D teachers on technology. Let's pro D teachers on assessment. And it's like, how many times can you skin a cat in terms of how you teach kids to read and write? How many, and at the end
Yeah.
of the day, it's like I'm like yelling from the rooftops. Our kids are lacking emotional intelligence. They're lacking grit, perseverance, and resilience. If we teach that, if we teach them to be emotionally intelligent and to persevere, it won't matter how you teach reading. Because look at us. Remember, we went to school. It was, you better memorize everything, right?
Oh yeah.
We learned
Oh yeah.
wrote, and I'm still a firm believer for rote memorization in schools. However, we're way smarter than that in schools now, where it's about critical thinking, communication, because we want our kids to cure cancer and do things and like that. But at the end of the day, it's all about these guys just getting in the way, and not, when they hear emotional intelligence or social emotional learning, they think it's fluffy. It's rainbows and unicorns, and even tough. Because I'm in BC, right? I live in logger world. My dad's They stir their coffee with their thumb. They don't use spoons. These guys are up there with chainsaws, taking trees down. Like we're talking blue collar. Like
Yeah.
when they come in, they smell like the forest, right? And so you start talking about emotional intelligence and taking deep breaths. They're like, Slanzi, what the? And I grew up with these guys, right? And also we got
Right.
cowboys and ranchers up here, so and then you get these old school guys have been principals or superintendents forever, and they haven't been in a classroom in a long time. It's like, well, what if we just taught reading this way, or if we brought in a new assessment group? It's like, dude, we got to teach these kids some common sense and how to be tough again. But when they hear, like I said, emotional intelligence, deep breath, they think, oh. But I want to tell you the toughest. I'll use my daughter for example. Like she struggles in school. She's got a learning disability, and this is going to probably people are going to think I'm the worst parent in the world. But she used to be a really good competitive swimmer, and then just loves sports. And now she's like 15, 16. She plays on a high level, club volleyball team. We have to drive an hour because we're in a small town. And before every practice and before every game, I whisper over to her. I'm like, "Don't be a pussy." I say that to her. She's like, "Oh, I know. It sounds horrible, right?" She's like, "Don't worry, Dad. I'm not a pussy." I'm like, "Okay." She goes, "I'm heavy fucking Slanzy." And this is my daughter, though, who's also afraid of her own shadow sometimes, right? And please, parents, don't call your kids that. If somebody hears this, they're going to think I should be fired from my job. But at the end of the day, I have a great relationship with my daughter, and she goes out and she plays tough. But I've also taught her since she was little, when things get tough, how to take some deep breaths, how to be strong, how to persevere. And I use that language. You got to persevere. You got to be gritty. You got to, but now when she's 16, she's not responding to it heavy. You got to have some grit. She's like, whatever, Dad. So now I'm like, hey, don't be a pussy. She's like, yeah. Right. And it's just that you just react to the generation. But
Right.
that's the problem is I've got both of my kids who grew up developing emotional intelligence, learning how to breathe, how to self-soothe, understanding their emotions. And now both of my kids are like they're out there kicking some butt, right? And that's what has to happen is we have to teach that emotional intelligence. Don't call your kids the P word. Don't do what I did. Forget actually saying that on your show. But
You're okay.
my daughter would
You're
be
right.
my daughter would be laughing her ass off right now. She's like, "Dad, you're gonna get fired."
Well,
But anyways,
make sure she listens to the podcast so she gets a kick out of it. So,
oh
um,
god,
fortunately, this is the Power of Man podcast, and anybody who would have been offended by anything that happens here left a long time ago. So
oh
we
okay,
we
good,
don't need to
good.
worry about that. So, no, you haven't crossed any lines. You're doing okay. So,
Thank you, Rory.
but I really appreciate your openness and your honesty, especially just with talking about all this. And as I'm hearing all of this, it sounds great. It sounds like very productive. I agree with, I would say, just about everything I've heard come out of your mouth. And part of that is, yeah, we're both Gen Xers who feel the same way about how things are today. And I guess the thing I'm sitting here wondering, and you brought it up in your bio a little bit, and I'd love to have you touch on this, is you want to do this. This is your program. So if it's your school, that's great. Is it your purpose, your goal to make this spread throughout an area, spread throughout Canada, get it widely accepted? Are you working with administrators? Because we all know that the school boards and the administrators are the ones who are going to say yay or nay on any of this stuff you're talking about. And while you and I may sit here and nod our heads about emotional intelligence and critical thinking and go, yeah, it's really needed, there's a lot of folks out there that don't want that because maybe they have an agenda that they want to shove down somebody's throat. And if you're critical thinking, then the agenda doesn't go down very easily.
Yeah.
So how do you bridge that next level gap? Because maybe you can get the teachers on board because they want change. Maybe you can get the parents on board because they want change. But do the administrators and the levels above that, do they want change? Is this something that can happen that way? And where are you on that?
Yeah, so I was talking about ego earlier. And so typically in the education system, you have a lot of principals. Yeah, I know a lot of amazing principals who are just doing amazing things, but there's still a lot of principals who have an overactive ego. So when we talked about ego, where it's like they don't want anyone coming into their school telling them what to do because it's almost
Hmm.
like a parent. You don't want to tell a parent how to parent because it makes them look bad. However, I think more and more principals are learning how to be vulnerable. So on Monday, for example, I'm going to a community an hour or so away, and I'm going to do a workshop on this. And in that workshop, I'm not even sure who's registered yet. there's going to be, roughly about 25 teachers there, right? There could be a couple administrators in the room too, but typically what happens is I will set up something called an open workshop. So on a Pro D day, I'll advertise and I'll get teachers show up from 50 different schools, and they come, and I teach them about this program, right? And they bring it back to their school. So on Monday when I go do this, I guarantee you what's going to happen, because it's a no-brainer. Like you said, I agree with almost everything you're saying. It'll be the same for teachers. They're going to be like, I agree with almost everything you're saying. How do we make this happen? So what happens is the teachers will go back to their school. They'll talk to their colleagues and say, we got to get this going. And so it becomes grassroots. And then what typically happens is they'll go to the principal, and the principal will look at their budget, and they'll go, well, I can't afford it. Sorry. Or they'll say, you know what, let me move some around. Let me get a hold of the district, see if they can throw some money in. And because I'm not cheap, but I'm also not expensive either, right? Like, it's because for me, when I do this program, you leave with these tools, you leave how it's embedded. You don't have to re-up with a subscription. You don't have to bring me back 3 more times, because it's common sense, right? And so what'll happen, I'll go do this workshop on Monday, and I guarantee you I'll get a month later, I'll get 2 or 3 phone calls from an administrator saying, hey, my teacher went to this workshop. I'm curious about it. And I'll say, okay, let's do a consultation. And then I'll go to that school, right? And so that's how it kind of works. And then what'll happen is, if a principal does it, I come in, their school starts to transform. All of a sudden the district kind of goes, what's going on over at that school? And then I'll get another phone call, and then it'll just kind of go from there, right? And my goal is this needs to be worldwide. Like I was talking about earlier about that conversation I had with the lady from Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
I told her recently, because I'd love to go to Ethiopia. I said, you know what? If you're talking to schools over there, because she does tutoring and stuff as well as working for me, I said, you tell them I will waive my fee for my workshop if they just pay my flight and a hotel. I said, I'll come over and do it for free, because even in Ethiopia, it's the same thing that's happening here. And so for me, I'm 51. My pension, I'm going to have a good pension at 55. I've done pretty well for myself. This isn't what's going to, I'm loving doing this, and I just want to be that pebble in the pond that sends a ripple out, right? And it's why I'm on these podcasts. And yeah, if I make some extra money and some change in my pocket, so I can, buy an extra half sack on a Saturday, then then that's a good thing. And although club volleyball, I could use some extra money to pay for my daughter's club volleyball. Holy man. But yeah, it's so for me, I'm just at that stage in my career where I've always been passionate about education. It hasn't felt like a job to me. It's been something, because I coached basketball for 25 years, swimming, and in Canada you volunteer to do that. You don't get a stipend, right? So I've given up every weekend I can for my kids, for other parents' kids, because I believe in it. And so for me, Rory, I just want to, like, I will continue doing this until I'm 70 and 80 if I can, because we have to make a shift, because this world is going to go to hell in a handbasket if we don't have adults with common sense and some emotional intelligences, and you look what's going on around the world with all the hatred, and we don't need to be there. Like, we don't,
Yeah.
I love, going, I go to the United States once a year to go watch a 49ers game. And, with everything that's going on down there, I'm a little nervous about going down there right now. It's like, why should I even feel nervous about going down to my friends, or because my sister works down there, right? And it's like, what? But I'm nervous. And it's like, what the f- are we even there? We don't have to be, and I think that's where the more we can educate kids and being emotionally intelligent, having some common sense so they can just be kind, empathetic people, and live life and not judge, man, the world would be so fun, you know?
Yeah,
So fun.
100%.
Yeah.
I I love that. I mean, no, in all honesty, you're probably not far off, because California is kind of a scary place these days. So, I think you're within your rights to be a little leery and looking over your shoulder a
Don't
little bit,
start picking on the Niners, though. Don't start picking on my Niners, buddy.
I,
I'm going to stop you there.
brother, I'm a Bear fan, so I can't pick on anybody.
Oh, yeah.
I can't pick on anybody, not yet.
I think
But
we lost to you last year, so you got me there.
oh, I'm telling you. No, I like the grassroots idea, because you use the same idea where the kids take the ideas home and spread it to the parents. You do that with the teachers then. So the teachers come to the conference, they take the ideas home, so to speak, to the school. They spread it to the administrators. Word starts to spread, and so on. So I love the way you're doing that. Social media, I can see how you're using that to kind of spread the seeds. Um, it's a tall order. Are you the only one working on this? Is it your personal program and it's you against the
This
world?
Yeah, this is my framework. I have a partner down in the city in the lower mainland. She's awesome. So she's in my business as well. And so we're a two-person show right now. But the bigger we get, the more there are like-minded people. My only rule, if I bring anyone on board, they have to care about kids. They have to. I don't care if the kid is the devil himself. You still have to find the goodness in that 5-year-old because we can still save them. And you have to be passionate about wanting to do the right thing for the world. If you're coming to me because you want to make an extra buck, go away. I really want to. I really want. I've been like coaching sports for so long, and the amount of kids I've saved by having them play basketball. I need that to continue. And so if once this grows, and it will, I just want people who are going to do right by kids and the world. Right. That's my rule.
Great, great. It's a tall order, but it sounds like you're making some headway.
Yeah, it's slowly. It's coming. It's coming. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. I wish you all the best on that, and I hope that people do kind of wake up and take a look at this program. It sounds, at least to me, it sounds like it absolutely is worth a look, and a try, because frankly, in our school systems right now, especially in the United States, what do we have to lose? I mean, really,
Oh
try
boy.
something new. What do we
Yeah.
have to lose? Because we've gone
Yeah.
over the cliff.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know it's a real shame. And I know there's a lot of good teachers in the United States, but it's gone, I don't know, 30 some odd years. I've been watching it for the last 25 years. And it just going back to the no child left behind act. It's everything's revolves around assessment. It's just got to stop. Like
Yeah.
just, yeah. 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 I don't, yeah.
Appreciate your insight. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's a cat we can skin another day, but
Yes, it is. It
for
is
sure.
definitely.
All right. So as we start to wrap this up, you do have 4 books out there though, right?
Yeah, I
Okay.
do.
And so one more time, give me the titles of the books and just a quick what they are, just so that everybody
Let
knows
me,
them.
sure. Okay. I'm going to
Oh,
hold them
awesome.
up.
All
Okay.
right. There
There's
we go.
an emotion, the new leadership paradigm
Paradigm.
beyond credentials and the letters behind your name. So that's about being good leadership. This is the emotional schools one, which is what the framework is based on. These are all on Amazon or my website.
Great.
This is my And Breathe book. This is the breathing strategy book. So it just helps parents and teachers out with coming up with silly breathing strategies, even though it's
Mhm.
just breathe in, breathe out. And I just made this one because it's we need to play. And my kids call me bruh. So I went, let's play, bro.
All right.
And so those are my books, and they're on my emotionalschools.com website or on Amazon, and they supplement the program, and they're great for parents and teachers, to help them kind of find some structured play activities to develop emotional intelligence. Right?
That is great. And you and I know that you told me all of this stuff is available on the website, and we will absolutely have the website in the show notes for anybody who wants to go check that out. And I recommend that you all do before you send me a DM about your ideas. Take a look at this, guys, and look up the book at least, and read an excerpt. But all right, so as we kind of bring this to a close, and I mean, wow, Leroy, it's been fascinating to hear you talk about this stuff. It really has, and I appreciate it very much. I want to make sure though that we've gotten everything out. So, is there anything that I should have asked you that maybe I missed? Is there anything that we talked about? Maybe you want to just drive home one last time, or maybe a nugget or some advice or something something to close with that you want to make sure you leave with folks. The last minute or two are yours, sir.
Yeah. I mean, I think Rory, you hit on everything. The one thing that I need from the men out there, because I like to consider myself a man's man. Like back in the day, I boxed. I had scraps I shouldn't have had. My buddies are all blue collar guys. I just happen to be the only one who went white collar. But it's emotional intelligence is safe. That when you hear the word vulnerable, it's not some woke liberal rainbows and unicorns thing. Like, stop, look in the mirror, ask yourself how your mental health is, your own daily struggles, and if you could just have an open mind around your kids learning to be emotionally intelligent, it'll make them stronger. It'll turn them into real men. And so don't look at emotional intelligence as a flaky thing. It's power. Bottom line.
Nice. Great way to end. I love how you brought that back to the guys who are listening right now, too. So I'm sure that they appreciate that. All right. So, father, principal, author, Leroy Slanzi, thank you for being on the show today, sir, and for sharing and for presenting these ideas. It really was a pleasure having you on today.
Appreciate it, Rory. It's great talk today.
Thank you. Gentlemen, this has been another episode of the Power Man podcast. And I mean, wow, what a topic. We all have our views on education, but I think if we can all get past the blame game and we can start looking at what we really need to do, if we can simply say, look, we are where we are, how do we move forward? I think that Leroy's got a lot of really good ideas, and I think that it's worth checking out. The other thing that I want to take from this is, and I've said this before, you've heard many, many men say this before, and a lot of you guys have said this to me that it's something you want to work on. But one of the themes from today is be present. Focus on your kids because no matter what your teachers are doing, no matter what your schools are doing, everything starts and stops with us as fathers, okay, as husbands in the home. Get your home right and then worry about what everybody else is doing. Guys, you can do it. And the reason you can do it is because you have value and you're worth it. You just have to believe it. Until next time.